participating either on Zoom or here live that if you'd like to speak to a specific action item or discussion item, if you're here, you can fill out a blue card and leave that with Todd in the back, and he will make sure that that gets to us. And if there's anyone on Zoom who'd like to make a comment to one of our action items tonight, you do so by leaving the comment in the chat, and that will be monitored throughout our meeting. Let's see, 2.3, recognition, Heroes Among Us.
Yeah, so there was quite an event last week at a basketball game here at Grants Pass High School, but some amazing action taken by a group of individuals. So I am going to turn it over to Anthony to do introductions and share what we're here about tonight regarding this presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Cole. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anthony Perry. I'm the Risk Management Supervisor for Grants Pass School District 7. About a week ago, we had an unfortunate incident at one of our basketball games where one of our officiating members, referee Mike Mann, had ended up collapsing. Very unfortunate. With some quick actions, some team efforts, a group of individuals that we would like to recognize tonight were able to ultimately save the life of referee Mike Mann. So here to join me with recognizing these individuals, we have Battalion Chief Wayne Nelson, who would also like to say a few words.
Good evening, and thank you for having us. I'm Wayne Nelson, I'm Battalion Chief of Grants Pass Fire Rescue. I'm here representing all of the fire department and just with the gentleman in the back as well. We are here because this was an anomaly. This doesn't happen very often. The chance of survival with CPR, depending on which research you look at, is about 10%. And there's a chain of survival that the American Heart Association recognizes, and it's early access, which is early 911, it's early CPR, it's early AED, and then we become like the fourth link in that chain where it's early advanced life support, early cardiac care, post-cardiac care, and so forth. We don't have a lot of options on those first three links of the chain. That is key for survival in these kind of events. But with the community togetherness, the 8 people in this gym worked together as a team, and they did some selfless acts and some amazing things in order to fill in those links in that chain. They accessed 911 right off the bat. They began CPR right off the bat, and they got that AED that the school had in that gym on that person and on that individual within that first 2 minutes of that cardiac arrest. That, and by the time we got there, you know, we're a busy system. Matter of fact, for ambulances that night, Rogue River had to come in from there. And it's because everybody else was already helping other people in our community. Our ambulances were worked really hard. The fire department showed up, and that individual was talking to him. And so for us to walk into that and to see something like that in an event that is normally not that way, we just are just overwhelmed with just gratitude and just thank you. And we all are here just to say thank you to those 8 individuals that went out of their way to do and to serve in our community that we're sworn to protect. And we can't say thank you enough for these individuals. We have a little life-saving award that we're going to present to each one of them, and a coin. And that coin is just kind of a signification that thank you for being part of the team that night. Thank you for helping us out, helping out the community, and just going above and beyond what would normally be a great basketball game. Now we just happen to save a life that night. And it's just one of those things that we just want to say thank you. And so we're all here to do that. And we have, like I said, a little challenge coin and a life-saving certificate for each of those individuals. So you want to present them now?
Yeah, so if we can get the individuals, we'll call you up by name. We'll stand up and present you with everything and save your applause for the end.
And if you could stay up, we'd love to take a picture with you if that's okay.
Mr. Sean Allison.
So they're receiving a certificate of recognition. They're receiving a life-saving award as well. Grants Pass made these really neat Grants Pass little metal things from the metal shop. And then this is our challenge coin. And this is the thing that just says, thank you for being part of the team. Challenge coins go way back in history. And if you do a little research on the website, you'll figure out what challenge coins really indicate, and you'll be part of that. And we really appreciate that. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Jake Lingo. Ms. Holly Zeiser. Official Ron Feen. Official Kevin Hill. Mr. Dave Huddleston. Apparently Dave couldn't be here tonight. And lastly, Mr. Clay Rounsville. So on behalf of Grants Pass School District 7, the school board,
Grants Pass Fire Rescue and all the first responders that are sworn to protect this community, we say thank you very much.
very much so.
Can we get one with pencil back? Sure appreciate it.
Moving a little bit there.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, we'll continue on. 2.4, our All Care Grant Award Letter. Mr. Kirk.
Yeah, well, welcome Dr. Bloomquist to introduce a few folks that may, I believe, we're going to join you tonight.
They have. So, Board Chair Nelson, board members, Superintendent Kolb, just a real privilege tonight to share this grant that we've received. So about a month ago or so, we were notified from the state that we were going to be recipients of some federal dollars for our homeless populations. And so this season, as we go into a lot of holiday and cheer and gift giving, we have a lot of families that this isn't necessarily a great season for them. But because of a grant like this, we're going to be able to help a lot of folks out. So we partnered with Three Rivers School District. So we got about 75 grand for homeless outreach and supports. They got about 73 grand. We decided to go together to combine resources. I called some partners. And so I called Kelly Wessels from UCAN, it's a United Community Action Network. And she's kind of a really great connective tissue for people who are struggling. And she handles a very large grant. So when I told her what we had, she said, oh yeah, that's what I spend every month for people. I'm like, oh, because we want to do something impactful. And we got to brainstorming. And I said, well, what are you missing? And she said, well, you know, not everybody knows how to take care of a home. And we often will give people dollars to rent a facility or wherever they are, whatever we can get, but they often don't know how to manage it. Like, it's complex to run a household. And she said, that's really the piece that we're missing. And I said, well, what if we could combine our dollars, and I'll call my friends at All Care and see if they have any dollars they can throw at it. And so Susan Fisher-Mackey and I chatted, and she said, yeah, we have some dollars. This is perfect. And so I've got Mr. David Hansen here, coming on up here from All Care, and to say a few words. And they kicked in another $120,000 to support this work. So just on behalf of the district and our partner with All Care and for UCAN and for Three Rivers, we are putting a ton of dollars right back into our families in this season when they're really struggling to get them off the streets, get them out of their tents. This is literally where they're living. Get them out of shelters into homes and help them manage. So a lot of these resources will go to staff, physicians to support those families directly. And how do you shop? How do you take care of this, that, and the other thing? And to support them with their overall social emotional needs that they're really struggling with. So it's a unique program. I don't see many out there like this. This is kind of unique. And I'm happy to have All Care as a partner. So if you want to come up and say a couple words.
Thank you, Dr. Bloomquist. Hey everyone, so my name is David Hansen. I recently just started with All Care in my second week actually. I'm part of the same team with Susan, which is the Community Health Improvement Team. It's really inspiring just to see some of the work that All Care has been involved with community partners. So just wanted to share a few words on behalf of All Care. So we are so pleased to be able to support the Grants Pass School District, Three Rivers, and UCAN with their efforts to support some of Josephine County's most vulnerable populations. We recognize that family supports and life skill building are paramount towards maintaining stable housing, and we are thrilled to invest in you all as you strive to achieve better health outcomes for the community. Of course, this work could not be done without the tireless efforts of staff and the vision of administration to make this project possible. We cannot wait to learn about the success stories you have along the way in implementing this project and how we at All Care can support in any way possible and overcome any barriers you may face. At the end of the day, our members are your students and your students are our members. And the degree of collaboration amongst all involved is truly exciting. So again, thank you Grants Pass School District, Three Rivers, UCAN for taking these issues head on, and here's to a brighter, healthier, happy new year.
Wonderful, thank you for that presentation. We're excited to see what happens. 2.5, a presentation by Lois McMillan.
Yes, Lois, the stage is yours. Something you've never been shy of.
Hi, I'm Lois McMillan. I just wanted to say that I taught in the Grants Pass School District since 1996. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. I always do. And I've taught at Redwood, taught at Parkside, South Middle School, now proudly at Grants Pass High School. So, Chairman Nelson, I have had the honor of teaching your children. I know your wife much better than I know you, for her and I have always reminisced about motherhood and what is good in the world. But you, Dr. Nelson, are a man of inspiration, of generosity, of wisdom, and of courage. 13th century Persian poet, Islamic scholar Rumi once wrote, "You are the one, you are the thousand, just light your lantern." A lantern elicits immediate recognition and evokes the shared cultural symbols of light and truth. Light is the beacon of warning, of safety, of hope in the wilderness. A lantern symbolizes the search for an honest man. It lights a dark path, illuminating the proper course. At the school board meetings of the last 2 years, Dr. Nelson, you have been a lantern through our many storms. Thank you. You have been an inspiration for many of my colleagues and for me through these difficult times. You have been consistent through your tenure in telling us what we may not want to hear, navigating us towards truth. Your moral compass has guided educators like me in believing in public service. You exemplify public service. You remind me of one of my political heroes, Margaret Chase Smith, who said, "The right way is not always the popular and easy way. Standing for right when it is unpopular is a true test of moral character." And you, sir, have moral character. President John F. Kennedy in 1957, with his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Profiles in Courage, recounted the stories of 8 U.S. senators who risked their careers by embracing unpopular positions for the greater good. Kennedy saw courage as the most admirable of human virtue, and he used Ernest Hemingway's definition of courage as grace under pressure. Chairman, you have been everything found in grace. You have been a courageous person, one who is honest, has integrity, and finds his own path despite the darkness of outside pressures. I have nominated you for Profiles in Courage Award, given by the John F. Kennedy Library. The award recognizes a public official at the federal, state, and local level whose actions demonstrate the qualities of political, courageous leadership. Last year, the award went to Senator Mitt Romney, so I don't know if the percentages are in your favor to win. But you have made us proud. Thank you again for your leadership, your generosity, and your courage. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois. That is way too kind. I want you to know that my wife is not here because she's attending our first grandchild who was born 2 weeks ago, and she would probably have some issue with some of the things that you said. And I want you to know that if I had known what that presentation was on the agenda, I would have certainly struck it off. But thank you, that was beautiful. I appreciate that. So thank you very much. Let's not ever do that again. No.
My apologies, Dr. Nelson. That somehow made it on when we overlooked it.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that.
Okay, I'll cover the rest of the communication and presentation. They're pretty standard communications to the board with links for out-of-state travel, a current financial report, and a donation that we have accepted on behalf of boys and girls basketball program.
Okay. On to 3.0, our consent agenda. We need a motion to approve our board agenda for tonight, as well as our board draft minutes from November 9th, and then also approval of our November 16th minutes with our RFP, our superintendent search, as well as our minutes from McPherson-Jacobson initial meeting on the 29th.
And I would just add that this agenda has been amended as a late arrival for the approval of the AP Calculus textbook. It's something we need to purchase rather quickly. It has been vetted pretty thoroughly and has been added as action item 6.3.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda along with the amendment by Superintendent Kolb. In addition, I would like to move agenda item 5.3 board statement to the community to 5.05, so it becomes the first item of the board reports and special concerns.
Okay, we have a motion.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda along with Superintendent Kolb's amendments and to move item 5.3 to the first item under board reports and special concerns.
Okay.
Did you understand, Debbie? Did you get all that?
I understand the proposal.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'm willing to second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Tanya, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes?
Member Coleman,
Cliff, do you agree with the motion?
Yeah.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Member Brown, no?
Yes.
Member Richardson,
Yes.
Member De La Grange.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. We'll move that in the agenda. We'll move that up in the agenda item and talk about our board statement when we get to that point first. 4.0, reports with no action. We'll have our principal's report. So Principal Thompson, we'll start with you.
All right, thank you. We'll jump right into essential topics. One is a report back to you on the new courses at Grants Pass High School you approved last spring, and late winter, spring, and then some holiday event updates. The 6 courses you approved last spring, we had only one that is not being offered this year. That's audition techniques. Our theater teacher, Justin Hockey, at the time proposed that. He has since left, and we have a new theater teacher, Julia Cuppy, and so with some transition there, that is not being offered. The other 5, though, are. Our own Lois McMillan, who is just here. She, if you remember, her proposal was for American Civil War. And so second semester, we'll have 2 sections of nearly 60 students that have signed up. It's yet another course offering that's an elective in social studies, and looks to be a very promising class. So excited for that. Basketball class was proposed by our PE department and approved by you. Jeff Houston is the teacher of record there. We have 34 students enrolled in that class, 1 section. 24 of them are male, 8 are female. 8 are female, 26 are male. 24 of the 34 made either the JV or varsity team, with the other 10 being avid basketball fans and love to play the game. Mr. Houston comments are kids are loving the class. The best part of the course is easily the amount of time that we can designate to parts of the game that often go overlooked. So kids, instead of just going out to play, they can now focus on details that matter, improving skill, ultimately leading to more enjoyment of the game. That'll also be offered next semester. I think at an earlier meeting this fall, I'd given you a little bit of a report on AP Environmental Science, so I won't go into quite as much detail. There are 2 sections of that, and that's Ross St. Clair in our science department. Just over 40 students, and that is a year-long course, and we're excited to see how our students perform in that class. As we know, the AP courses carry an exam with it as well. And then I forgot, Reach for Success. That was a big new one, and that is from Sarah Craven. I'm going to mention Sarah again in just a moment, but that is we identified students that had 2 and 3 Fs at the middle school, and they have potential. They just needed a little more support. It's kind of, they might not quite be ready for Avid yet, but we had some kids who just need some organization skills, some study skill needs, some self-confidence, etc. And so we've had between 90 and 100 kids in 6 classes. We try and keep those classes just a little bit smaller to get a little more attention to detail. I may follow up with Director Evans on a board report for that class, because it has, there's some really neat things that I would like Sarah to tell you about in that class. And Rochelle Watson, our 9th grade success coordinator, is nodding her head because her team worked really closely in those courses. So more to come. And then lastly, our money management personal growth class. The reason we have that class is because our community asked for it. We had listening sessions, if you remember, with the additional dollars that we received a couple years back from the state on student success. And Allison Bolin, one of our math teachers, proposed this class. She did a good enough job with it that we can't even we cannot meet all the demands. So we have more students requesting it than can take it. We have about 60 students taking it this semester in 2 sections, and another 60 next semester. They cover time management, money management, meal planning, correspondence on email, social media etiquette, sewing. I walked in last week and they were sewing how to sew a button, and they were making an ornament with it. They were revisiting cursive, which they haven't done since 4th grade, and writing letters of appreciation to teachers they'd had in years past. Monthly cash flow budget, week of meals planning, and a number of other things I won't go into detail with, but really excited about that course, and we hope as we have room available on our schedule to offer more of those sections. All right. So that was our new courses. Thank you again for approving those. I think they've been very well received. Lastly, for Grants Pass High School, just the holidays. You saw a lot of the decorations as you walked in the foyer. Our leadership group, our ASB leadership, has just done a phenomenal job this year and really lifting that school spirit and trying to make it just a difference in the everyday lives of students. In addition to those decorations, they played Christmas music, holiday music in between each period, which is kind of another good little lift. They had conducted a decorative tree contest on every door of every classroom, and with prizes given out for the top ones. We have Spirit Week this week, of a dress-up day each day. We see white was the choice today for snowmen. 3 community partners have been worked with. We have our Women's Crisis Support Team, in which they asked for donations in our community. A lot of our families and parents have donated. 108 gifts bought so far that will be donated to our Women's Crisis Support Team. Super excited there. Also, Maslow has been a partner, and we filled up several bins worth of coats donations for Maslow. Our third community partners are Sparrow. We have a young person that has been sponsored, and the holiday grams and hot cocos that are for sale, all the money is going to be donated to that Sparrow. So kudos again to leadership. They also conducted a snack drive. We have a lot of hungry kids here on campus in the morning, at lunch, after lunch, and at the end of the day. And 6,558 snack items were donated by our students for our students to be given out to our kids. I can't emphasize enough the hunger that we see on an everyday basis here. I mentioned Sarah Craven earlier. Mrs. Hosfeld, our communications director, put out on social media a neat little project. She was sitting down to help a student organize their binder. Student was in tears and upset because it was heavy, burdensome, and she really wanted to have folders, but she said, my family doesn't have enough money to buy folders. So Ms. Craven put out an Amazon donation plea through social media and received over 200 different gifts for her students of calculators, rulers, highlighters, binders, folders, and all other kinds of school supplies. And so they're well outfitted in that class, the Reach for Success classes that she is teaching. So kudos to Sarah. Finally, an office staff member, Kathy Deli, has helped organize donations by our staff, and over $2,000 has come in to buy gifts and other items of need for students who need those. So thank you to Kathy and our staff. And then some of you might have gotten a chance either online or in person to see our holiday concerts last week. I know North was last night, South tonight, and Grants Pass High had 3 last week. Super exciting to see 750 people together, and obviously masked, but really nice to be together. First time we've had an event of that size in the Performing Arts Center since the pandemic. That's all from Grants Pass High. Mike Shunk.
That was exciting, Ryan. You guys have a lot of amazing things going on. So I'm Dr. Michael Shunk, and it is with great pleasure that I get to celebrate the amazing students, teachers, and staff at Gladiola High School. I'll start with some data so I can set the tone of the amazing work happening on our campus. 37 students in Q1 passed all 5 classes, earning 2.5 credits in just 1 quarter. This means approximately 42% of our Q1 students are on track to earn 10 or more credits this year, equating to be able to finish the entirety of high school in 2.4 years, which is amazingly impressive. The average credit earned per student in Q1 was 2 full credits. This means the average student at Gladiola can earn 8 credits per year, essentially graduating in 3 years. And with our focus on catching up on credits, this is excellent news and is a lot of amazingly hard work by students, our wonderful teachers, and impressive support staff. 77% of our students passed at least 4 out of their 5 classes, with most of those earning an incomplete in the 1 class, meaning they earned enough credit to get close, and they're going to hopefully be able to make up that credit in academic tutorial Q2. That should put us above 90% of our students earning credit for every class in 1 quarter at Gladiola. We had 0 Gladiola suspensions first quarter. This has largely been accomplished by the strong tone of expectations and support set on campus and in class, and the very hard work of our student support crew. If we could clone and place a copy of our therapist, Lauren LeGrand, in every school in the nation, we could change the trajectory of every community. Gladiola ended up with an 84% average attendance for Q1. Absolutely stellar for a high school right now. I've compared this with a lot of our surrounding high schools south of us, and we're on par with a lot of the larger comprehensive high schools at our alternative education school. This is stellar for an alt-ed school. Some of our direct comparisons were 30 percentage points higher than where they were for first quarter, which is amazing. So many factors go into this result, but a lot rests on the shoulders of teachers and staff, making a welcoming, caring environment that students want to attend each day. And in our tireless attendance support person, Stephanie DeWitts, working to connect with students and hold them accountable for being on campus. Again, this data is wholly built on our amazing teachers and staff at Gladiola and it is indicative of what can happen when a community truly focuses on student-centered work, collectively using the filter of what is best for students. From my first impression of the staff when I met the team last year, I could immediately tell that every adult on campus was student-centered and prioritized the needs and education of all students. This was evident in the staff's election to change the daily schedule to allow for a compression of a semester class into a quarter, allowing students to potentially earn 10 or more credits a year. This is a lot of extra work by the teachers, but also provides a lot more opportunity for students. And with so much lost credit during the past year and a half with distance learning and our crazy pandemic we've all been living through, this is a heartfelt gift as well. Special appreciation for that goes out to teachers and staff, but our amazing academic counselor, also Holly Hayes, who is constantly balancing a million different pressures and scheduling things to make sure we have the most efficient, best schedule for every student on campus. This year has been especially difficult getting up and running after a year and a half of largely distance learning. Our amazing student services team has been working hard to connect with students to help remove barriers and support resource and mental health needs, with many students being newly connected with mental health counseling, both on campus and through options. Brandy Strom and the Maslow team has been key in connecting students with needed resources and support, and Roddy Grace and the Project U Plus team has helped to work to provide a brighter light at the end of the tunnel for many of our students. So we're not just graduating them, but we're setting them up for a successful, healthy future as well. Our GPAS behavior support program has become quite full, supporting some of the behaviors seen on our campuses. And I also applaud the hard work the other district schools are doing supporting students. I see it on a daily basis, the hard work going into supporting and loving our students. But I wanted to give some particular recognition to Debbie Wilson, the GPAS teacher, and Ethan Lackey, our GPAS EA, educational assistant, for the impressive work they're doing helping our district students learn skills to better exist positively in the school environment and in our larger community as a whole as well. And I absolutely need to thank our amazing front office crew, Holly Jordan, our awe-inspiring office manager, and Jamie Adams at our front desk holding the whole system together. Gladiola would not run at this high level without you too. And a few other fun notes. We had a whole school full Thanksgiving meal for each student on campus before Thanksgiving break. Not to overgeneralize our students, but we have many students that don't get to experience the traditional Thanksgiving that many of us grew up with. And our amazing leadership crew led by John Valadez and his support team of Doug Borngasser and Ethan Lackey, and all of the leadership students worked very hard. We prepared at least 4 to 5 full turkeys on campus, full hams, potatoes, green bean casseroles, dessert, sparkling apple cider, and we had a lot left over to bring home to families as well. And so we had a full meal Thanksgiving at Gladiola, and it was a beautiful event. And for the holidays, our school has adopted 2 families from our elementary schools and are outfitting an entire Christmas experience for these 2 adopted families. So far, we have already delivered fully decorated fresh Christmas trees to these homes. And the staff and students are collecting presents for the family members, and we are also outfitting each family with a complete holiday meal for them to enjoy together for Christmas. That's the amazing work at Gladiola. I am very proud of every human being on our campus, and thank you for your support of that.
You've left us speechless, so thank you. I think we have a GP Flex, Principal Savage, or no, tonight? Last month. Comments from the board then, Brian?
Yeah, thanks for those reports. There's a lot going on, and it all sounds great. I had a question for you, Ryan, about, you brought up hungry students on campus, and that's something that you see a lot. I was wondering, because as far as I understand, we have free meal programs and things like that, so I'm just wondering, is there a disconnect why there's hungry students, or is that, I was just wondering if maybe you could speak a little more to that, just to offer a little more clarity.
Just briefly, we do have breakfast and lunch every day. They're a stacked meal. We do not currently offer warm meals. We're in the process of trying to get that going again. I think that will help some. We're also under some concerns over the quantities or what's included in the meals by federal guidelines. And so
I will tell you, most of our students say it's not good enough. And if we're kind of hamstrung by that, by those federal guidelines. And so we have 4 different clubs on campus that have used their own budgets to offset, to provide food. Michelle and I went through discussing with one of us. We feel like we couldn't sustain the amount of money to buy those items, and probably another challenge another time. But we do have a lot of sensitive adults out there that see the need and are doing what they can to help kids.
Okay, great. I would ask that if there's things that the board can do to help ensure that we don't have hungry students, to please bring those opportunities forward to us. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Principal Thompson, students graduating in 2 years, graduating in 3 years, that sounds like a challenge to me.
Cassie?
Oh, Brian, I just want to say, I've heard lots of parents talking in the community that their children were home and were able to eat at all times. And so coming back to school when there's only regulated times has kind of been an issue to get them. And the meals, I have a high schooler, the meals are incredibly small. Even the apples.
I will add that my child is such a picky eater, both of them. I would eat the lunch, they wouldn't because they've been spoiled at home. So on a lighter note, opportunity knocks, sometimes they don't open.
Right?
So if there's things that we can do in addition to what is offered through the federal guidelines, because it sounds like in a lot of cases those meals are not sufficient, or with some people not to their liking. But I think that that is within our bounds to consider having additional nutritional supplement for students.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much. It is exciting to hear about all of the wonderful events that are happening in both schools, and I was able to attend the music performances last week, and I'm hoping to make it to my daughter's tonight. We'll see what time we end here, but they have been excellent, and please give our many thanks and appreciation to the music department and the band. Everything that goes on in both of our schools, both Gladiola and here at the high school, and I know the others, is wonderful. So it really is a shining light in our district, and we're very grateful for all that you're doing, so thank you. All right, 4.2, State School Fund Update. Director Ely, we'll turn the time over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nelson. I put some information in your packet regarding where we are at with our state school fund. I think as everyone knows, because of the pandemic, we are losing a lot of students. We're down about 550 students, and the district is paid based on the number of students we have enrolled in our school. And so when you look at a loss of 550 students for the current school year, that's about $3.7 million that we are losing in state school funding. Todd, can you go ahead and advance forward? And you don't really need to because I can just talk. When I project forward into the 22-23 school year, I'm projecting that we're going to have a revenue loss of over $5 million. So the combined loss for 21-22 and 22-23 is getting close to $9 million. We do have the federal ESSER funds that we received due to the pandemic. Those funds are significant. The American Rescue Plan funding that we received through the Biden administration is about $14.6 million. The money that we had received under the Trump administration was about $6.5 million. We've spent a small portion of the $6.5 million. We have about a little over $5 million of that left. We haven't spent any of the $14.6 million. When we were doing our budgeting last year, we didn't realize that we were going to have such a huge loss of ADM, and so we had set some priorities of how we wanted to spend that money, and the board is aware of that. And I put a summary in your packets for you to look at that. Some of the things included upgrading the HVA systems at Redwood and Lincoln, doing some upgrades at the Grants Pass High School gym because we currently don't have an air filtration system or air conditioning in the gym. Some of the other things we were looking at were doing some revamping of the restrooms at Grants Pass High School and North and South Middle School to make those safer areas for all of our students. So kind of making common bathroom areas where the stalls were more enclosed, kind of like what you see, like if you go to Olive Garden, where each of the stalls are separate, they would look like that. And then there would be a wash area that would be more open to the hallway, so there would be better supervision. So that would take care of some of the bullying and that kind of thing. One of the other things we looked at were revamping the fields at North and South Middle School, because currently we're not able to use them for track and field or football or anything like that. And so looking at some of those items that we thought would be a good use of that money, that would be sustainable projects that would be ongoing, rather than just spending it on things that would just be kind of ongoing, that we would have to continue spending money for. However, when we look at the significant loss of funding, we're going to have to reprioritize how we're going to spend our money. And so I wanted the board to be aware of that. And I feel like we should bring back the budget committee possibly in maybe mid-January, and have the budget committee look at the deficit, look at the priorities that we had identified before, and then possibly reprioritize those funds. If we don't use the ESSER money, either the 6.5 that we received from the Trump administration or the 14.6 from the Biden administration, our other options are cutting school days, eliminating staff. We would have to have some staff reductions. We have a PERS reserve that we can use a portion of, our PERS reserve that we could cover a portion of that. Each of those would not be enough to cover the loss that we're potentially looking at. And so I think that we need to look at spending the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 money first to keep our doors open. I think that needs to be our number one priority. And that's why I feel like we need to bring the budget committee back in session sometime in January, just to talk about what we should be doing with our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 money to keep the doors open, and remembering that our main priority as a school district is to provide an adequate education for our students and maintain the staff that we have. As I think everyone probably can attest, staffing shortages are an issue as well. And so whatever we can do to maintain the staffing levels that we have now so that we can provide the education that we are to our students, I think that needs to be our top priority. And then also maintaining facilities that are safe, warm, and dry, or have air conditioning when we're in the summer months and during our wildfire season. And so those are my issues, those are my worries, those are my concerns that I wanted the board to be aware of, so that going forward, we're making the best use of those federal dollars that we have. And then just projecting forward, even beyond 22-23, I think the board needs to keep their eye on our target of enrollment, because losing 550 students, that's a lot. And are we going to recover all of those students? Are we going to continue to decline? And I think we need to take some time and study that issue as well. I've started doing a little bit of work on enrollment projections, looking at survivability rates. And when I say survivability rates, that means like how many kindergartners did we have this year, how many went on to first grade, and then from first grade to second grade to third, how many of our students are staying in our district, and looking at that over a period of time, just to kind of help us project forward even further on what our enrollment might look like down the road. And so there might be even some tougher decisions if we don't recover, some of the students that have either moved out of our area or being homeschooled or going to private schools or charter schools. So anyway, those are my concerns and my worries. And so I'll take questions if you guys have questions.
Brian? Yeah, thank you, Sherry. Sorry. So I'm sure we're not the only district that has seen enrollment declines.
Correct.
Do we have any idea of how it's affected other districts in the state? And, you know, I did a little rough, I mean, it looked like we dropped about 8%,
Yep.
give or take. So if, in theory, if all districts dropped 8%, the amount per student would go up and we wouldn't lose any funding. So is that going to be offset to some degree?
It has already been offset, so we're seeing, you know, anywhere from, you know, like a 2% reduction up to a 10%. We're one of the higher losses of students. And so how the state school fund works is it's based on initially the projection that you send to ODE of what your enrollment is going to be for the following year. And then they look at your enrollment in October, and then they do a true up in January. If you know that your enrollment has declined significantly, you can let ODE know that, and they'll adjust your state school funding sooner rather than later, which is a smart thing to do because you don't want to get to like March or June and have, you know, a $10 million bill that you have to pay back to ODE. So most of the school districts that are losing enrollment have done that. So they've submitted their new estimates to ODE, and ODE did rebalance the state school fund. That gave us about $1 million back. And so instead of losing what I initially projected was going to be 4.5 million for this year, it's about 3.7 million. And that's because the state has already rebalanced the state school fund. So it's not like you're going to recover everything back when they rebalance the state school fund, because it depends on what's happening in other districts. And there are a lot of other nuances that go into the state school fund besides that. But the amount that you see there is the rebalancing, and that is our new estimate for this school year, which is that 3.7 million loss for this year.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Are you all okay with me setting up a budget committee meeting sometime mid-January when that can work for everyone? Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, that would be fine. Sure, we do have a number of meetings in January, so I'm sure Tanya will be able to guide us on the dates that we would have available.
All right.
But
Thank you so much.
I do have one question. I know that we spent a fair amount of time calling and talking to families about the reasons their children weren't being enrolled or where they were being enrolled. Do we have any sense of what happened to the 550 children or so? And is there any indication that they were waiting for masks to be lifted or COVID to be over? Or, I mean, what were the reasons that were given, I guess, as far as looking at that maybe help us think about the future and try to predict what's going to happen?
Specifically for Grants Pass School District 7, I think Susan and Trish could probably speak to the reasons on a statewide level. The state has done a lot of work on that also, and the majority of the students they have found are being homeschooled because we have seen, or the state is seeing some decline even in charter school enrollment. So, I mean, your first thought would be they're probably all going to charter school or doing it online or something like that, and that's not the case. Some families have moved out of state because of the restrictions in Oregon, and so that's a portion of it, but the large majority statewide are homeschool. That's where most of the students are. And I don't know, Susan, if you have any other information on elementary kids or...
I would just make a couple of comments. Statewide homeschool enrollment has doubled in the last 2 years. So that's a significant portion hitting a number of, and the other trend we see is the majority of enrollment losses at the elementary level, which is a level that's more, I don't want to say easier. I don't think homeschooling for any family is necessarily easy, but it's more palatable, doable is the younger kids staying home and receiving homeschool. Charter schools are still seeing record enrollments as well. So it's really across the board. We'll get, they're required when they enroll in charter schools to provide district notification, and we're still averaging 2 to 3 per week that we're getting notifications on, whether they're current students or students that moved into the area and were already enrolled somewhere else. That varies quite a bit. So those are the trends we're seeing. I don't know if Susan or Trish want to speak to any of that.
And I think it's, I don't know if it's 50/50, I don't have a full data, that we have many families who didn't want to come to school if their little ones were going to have to wear masks. We had many families who didn't want to come to school because they didn't feel like we were strong enough in our COVID safety protocols, and they didn't feel it was safe. So it wasn't a preponderance of one feeling or another, but in general, it was COVID is the reason why. And I do agree that parents feel more equipped to handle the content at an elementary level. If they're going to homeschool, then they often do middle school or high school. I experienced that as a parent when my son got to a certain level of math. Kind of helped you. So, they feel more comfortable at an elementary level to do that. I do think we have a lot of families who are forced into having, obviously, with the shutdown kids at home, their young kids, and then realize that they can make that work in their family dynamics with jobs or whatever, and liked it. It wasn't a statement about school, about our community at all. It just was that they enjoyed having that time with their young children. So it's a combination of
All right, thank you. Brian, question, comment?
Yeah, just a comment. I think it's good for us to send this, or to convene a budget committee on this issue. One comment I do want to make is I have a concern about using one-time revenues for ongoing expenses. So I just want to make sure the board's aware that typically that's not something we should be doing. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Sherry, for the update. We will now go to 5.0, Board Reports and Special Concerns. We've moved our board statement to the community up to our first item on this bullet point. The board has spent a fair amount of time working on this together, and I appreciate all of their efforts. Board Member Richardson has volunteered to read the statement to the community, and so we'll let him do that. And then we have a number of people who would like to speak to that issue, and so we'll do that once we've had that, and if there's any comments from the board members. So, Gary.
Grants Pass School District 7 community. In the wake of the decision made... Am I back? Okay. In the wake of the decision made by the Board of Education to reinstate the two educators, we would like to reassure our students, staff, and families that Grants Pass School District 7 is fully committed to providing safe school environments that are conducive to learning for all students. We recognize that there are student populations that experience higher than average levels of discrimination and bullying in schools, including but not limited to LGBTQ+ students, students of color, and students who experience disability. The Board of Education recognizes that it will take intentional efforts at all levels to ensure that students within these populations, as well as all other students, are safe and welcomed without discrimination and without bullying. The Board of Education has policies in place to support safe, inclusive learning environments for all students and staff. While there are many policies, including policy JFCF, harassment, intimidation, bullying, cyberbullying, teen dating violence, and domestic violence, student policy AC, non-discrimination, and policy JHH, student suicide prevention, two policies, JBB and policy ACB, are most applicable to our current situation. Policy JBB, District Educational Equity, states in part, the Grants Pass School District will create and maintain schools with a welcoming, supported, safe, inclusive culture and environment that reflects and supports the diversity of the student populations, their families, and their community. Affirm the identity of each student, acknowledge and celebrate differences to create a sense of belonging for each student, and identify and counteract bias practices that perpetuate achievement disparities and lead to disproportionate levels of student success. Policy ACB, All Students Belong, states in part, student success will not be predetermined by race, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, mobility, language, marital status, documented status, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, ability, religion, or any other form of discrimination. All students are entitled to a high-quality educational experience free from discrimination or harassment based on perceived race, color, religion, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. The Grants Pass Board of Education is dedicated to ensuring the well-being of everyone in our schools. We recognize that there is still significant work to do in reaching our goals around equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we pledge to hold ourselves and the district as a whole accountable to our accepted policies. The board reaffirms not only our commitment to these policies, but to regularly review our progress on these and encourage students, staff, and families to join us in this endeavor. Regardless of race, religion, gender, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or ability, we all belong in Grants Pass School District 7. We are GP. Sincerely, Board of Education.
Thank you, Gary. Any comments from the board? Brian?
Is there going to be a opportunity for the board to comment after the public, or is now our time to comment?
Well, it's board reports and special concerns, so I guess we can comment whenever we like, but we can open it up and let the public. We have 3 individuals who'd like to speak to this item, so I'm happy to let them do so, and we can make our comments afterwards if you would like. So in no particular order, Michael Workman. If you want to go to the microphone, that would be great. And you have 3 minutes for your comments, and Todd will put the timer up for us. Thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Michael Workman. Thanks for having me. I went to school Hidden Valley and Lincoln Savage out in Murphy. I don't know. I'm just hearing y'all say, you're fully committed to the students, but then it seems like you're kind of backtracking. Fully committed to the students, but just a little more leeway for the staff that we're reinstating when you're talking about policies, and how we have all these policies in place. Was there not a policy that said these staff couldn't be, working on their own political agenda at school? I don't know the specifics, but it's just weird to hear you talk about policy, even though policy doesn't seem to matter. Just really concerned for the students. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Indra Nichols.
Good evening. I have been a parent of District 7 schools for over 20 years. I've recently come to the conclusion that District 7 is not serving students in a way that prepares them academically and/or emotionally for a successful future. While I appreciate this board statement to the community, it in no way encompasses what I, as a community member, would expect to read. I was shocked and disgusted by a video I saw of the recent student walkout. The board should be apologizing to the community members that you allowed such a shameful and embarrassing display of student behavior. School culture comes from the top. Your patent disregard for student safety was evident in the fact that administrators did nothing to prevent or discourage the walkout, and teachers simply allowed students to leave class. It is extremely disturbing that students were allowed to mix and mingle with adult strangers that showed up for the event, leading to a very dangerous situation. A situation, in fact, that led to the arrest of several students and could have been much worse. What are you teaching students? It appears that you are teaching children to be victims. We used to teach students to be independent thinkers and problem solvers. You are teaching children that breaking rules, screaming obscenities, intimidating and harassing people who disagree with them is acceptable. You are teaching children that it's okay to shout down, jab fingers in the face, and physically assault adults in positions of authority, including school administrators and police officers. It's unbelievable. Were there any consequences to the students for these actions? Sadly, I would guess not. Your attempts to appease a small minority of students, some of whom in fact are the bullies, doesn't work. Why? Because it's never enough. You can't make enough resolutions. You can't write enough apology letters. You can't have enough trainings. You can't fire enough staff to make them happy. Life is not always fair. Children must learn healthy strategies of adaptation and coping skills. When necessary, children must suffer the consequences of poor choices and bad behavior, however noble the intent. I implore you to take a good look at the culture of District 7 and each of its schools. The words which we now hear so often, welcoming, safe, inclusive, are meaningless. They are just so many subjective words. Your job is to educate our children. Your job is not to promote, encourage, and/or stand by and watch activist social justice mobs gather at our schools. You must not acquiesce to this, many of whom are not even Grants Pass residents. Look, we all love children. We're all here because we love children and we want them to learn. That's our goal. I think we can all agree to that, but we have to do better. We have to do it in a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Indra. Last is Matt Morza, is that correct?
I guess that's good enough. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks for allowing me to talk. When I was 35 years old, I was body surfing at one of my favorite breaks in Port Hueneme, California. And after about an hour in the water, I decided to get out and get a bite to eat. It was one of those days, we have a lot in Oregon actually here, where you're standing at the coast and you can't really tell where the ocean ends and the sky starts because everything's just a gray picture. As I was walking out of the water, I don't know why I did, but I happened to turn and look over my left shoulder, and I saw a young man floating by me caught in a riptide. There were no lifeguards on duty. It was an empty beach until you get about a quarter mile up where the pier was. I turned around, I looked at the young man, I tried to get his attention, and I finally yelled at him. I said, "Are you okay?" And then he turned and looked at me surprised. He said, "No." So I jumped in, and I saved his life. I got him up on the beach, and I said, "Where's your family?" He looked at me, and he says, "I don't know." So we walked towards the pier, and as we got up towards the pier, he saw his mom and his brothers and sisters. He said, "Oh, they're over here." So I walked up, and Mom knew something was wrong right away. She looked at me, she said, "What happened?" And I'm not going to lie, I was a little angry at Mom for taking her eyes off her kid, considering there were lifeguards on duty. And I said, I think it's only through the grace of God that I happened to look over my shoulder. I said, because if I hadn't, I would have never seen him. And he happened to be going by me right at the moment I was coming out of the water. And the mom thanked me profusely for about 15 minutes because she realized had I not turned around, her son would have never grown up. This young man was black. His mom was black. His brothers and sisters were black. I guarantee you on that day, that mom did not care the color of my skin, what my gender was, that I was married, that I had children of my own. But unfortunately, we have adults in this society now who are convincing our children that the most important thing about them is their gender or their skin color, the people they love. It is the least important thing. And I wish they'd knock it off. And it's outside organizations like RLP.org who are pushing it. They're the same ones who started their letter writing campaign to get rid of these teachers. The most important thing about any of us is our humanity. And I thank God today that I happened to be walking up that beach when that young man went floating by me. I would have never known him, and it wouldn't have had any impact on my life. But you can be sure it mattered to his mother. So it's about time, because we are having an educational sort of a renaissance here. If you want to know why these parents are homeschooling, it isn't just because of the masks. It's not just because of the vaccines. There are a lot of other things at play here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we'll open it up to the board for any comments. Brian?
Yep, thank you. So I put together the first draft of this, and what we're reviewing today is very close to that draft, and I appreciate Chair Nelson getting buy-in from board members on this and working together on a statement that we could all be satisfied with. There was a few things, after I created that first draft, I went out and talked to some people I know in the community just to get their opinion of what they thought of it. And I talked to a student, I talked to a parent, I talked to another friend, and the feedback that I got was that the statement didn't really have any, there was nothing actionable in it. So, it was just, I don't want to say it was, I don't want to say it's empty, but they didn't feel like there was any sort of commitment or follow-through required with the statement. It was kind of just a statement and then we move on. So I appreciated that feedback that I got. And I tried to, take that to heart and include a few things that would be, more actionable and more meaningful in the statement. And one of those things is something we've actually talked about. I don't think we've talked about it as an entire board, but we had a listening session with students, and one of the things that was brought up was the fact that some of our secondary schools only have male counselors or mental health professionals. And there was a discussion with some of us about trying to balance the fact that we should probably have at least one female mental health provider at each of the secondary schools. And so to me, that seemed like a very reasonable ask. I don't know why there would be any sort of issue with that. So that was one thing that's not in this statement and doesn't necessarily need to be in this statement, but something that I think that we should discuss and move forward on. A couple other things real quick. Another suggestion was to have something in here about the training that staff receives. And I personally don't know the level of training that staff has currently. So it might not be appropriate to have it in this statement since I am unaware of the current level of staffing. But I think that maybe at a future board meeting, maybe the board could just get a quick report or a quick presentation as far as what current staff gets as far as training in this regard. And then the other thing was just to continue exploring avenues of communication with different student groups on campus. And that's something that we should probably be doing anyway. And so those are a few things that I was hoping would get into this statement, just so that the community could see it as more actionable. They're not in this copy, but I just wanted to make sure that the people that I had talked to had their voices heard as far as this statement goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I can say that, the board does not hire individuals, but certainly we can share our views with the superintendent, with the district leadership on things that we would like to see. And I think it's very reasonable to ask for a presentation on what trainings are received. I think that's can be something that the board is able to do. So very happy to work with Kirk on that, and we can continue to I will look for a time to schedule, an update on what training is provided to our teachers and staff. I think that's a very reasonable ask from the board. So, are there any other comments or questions about that? Ryan?
Just to follow up, I would just be curious if there's any members of the board that, specifically with having a female mental health provider at each of the secondary schools. I mean, I'm just curious if there are any issues with that the board sees, and if there isn't, I think maybe we should provide direction to have that be a goal in the near term. So I don't know if anyone has any issue with that, but I would invite you to voice it.
Gary, this isn't Jeopardy. You can push the button at any time.
Well, it was double pumping on me. Those things you're talking about, which the board should discuss, but they're budgetary items, and so they need to occur in the proper forum, as I guess would be my comment related to it. It's not necessarily opposed to that, but it has to be a conversation that we have in conjunction with our other budget items.
No, yeah, I understand that. I don't think I'm asking for more providers. As I understand it, I think we even have one school that has 2 and one that has 0. So it might just be a matter of rebalancing. I don't even know that it's necessarily a budget issue.
Todd?
So it's not necessarily an ask for additional positions as much as trying to fill those positions, perhaps if they become vacant, with more diverse group. You're talking about adding female counselors, so to speak, if we needed more of a balance when there's vacancies that come open?
Yeah, that would be one way of addressing it. I think another way would just be to simply rebalance the staff we currently have. Like say we have 2 female at South and 0 at North, and we just, kind of shuffle it so there would be 1 and 1. So there's a couple different ways to do it.
Sure. Okay. If no other comments, then we're going to go to 5.1 on our agenda item, which is now 5.2, Superintendent Search Update. And so I would direct the board to the reports section of your folder. We have included a few items that I wanted to just go over with you tonight. So the first, I have, as you know, been working with Doug Nelson, not a relation, of McPherson and Jacobson, our search firm that we have engaged to help us find a new superintendent. Within your board packet is a position description of the Grants Pass superintendency, and this is an iteration from the meeting that we had the last time where we discussed the background skills and abilities that we were looking for in a leader, and he was able to type all those up and put them into sort of a readable format that he would then use to send out and begin the search process. So that's been attached in your packets. I don't think we have to vote on it, but I am curious if there's any comments on that. This is what he has sent us, and so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. And then we'll talk about the next item, which is the finances. So we'll start with this. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I thought that what he wrote up looks really good. The one suggestion I might have is under the qualifications, they're bulleted 1 through 6. The first one, I was kind of just thinking of maybe doing a shuffling, because the first one, it kind of comes out of the gate really, really hard. It has, the word strong, firm, hard, conflict, all in the very first sentence, and it just was kind of like a real hot bullet right out of the gate. Maybe, and it's a matter of semantics here, but bullet 3 I think might be a good one to lead with, or possibly bullet 5, but as far as the content overall, I think it's pretty good.
Okay, that's certainly fine. If the board feels the same way, we're happy to reshuffle the order, and I can take that back to Doug, so. Todd?
And I'm fine with reshuffling and perhaps avoiding numbers that imply that there's a precedence or a priority of 1 through 6 versus just bullets.
Okay. So which one would we like to see first? Please give me a number so I don't make a mistake, and then we'll ask him to take the numbers out, which is fine. So would we like to see number 3 as our first lead bullet point? Please don't all speak at once. I mean, we've got all night, so, okay. Thank you, Brian. You're comfortable with that? Is everyone else comfortable with having 3 being our leading statement? Okay. All right. Is there any that you'd like to follow that, or should we just bump that one up to the top and just leave the rest in the same order?
Number 5, I mean, number 5 sounded like a good second bullet, and then the first one sounded like a good third bullet to me.
Okay. Any objections to that from the board? We'll make this easy. Okay, perfect. So I will send those changes off to Doug, and we can reshuffle the order, and I'll ask him to take out the numbers, and we'll just have benign bullet points. The next item that he has asked us to consider is a range of salary. And so I did email him today, and there was an email that I received early this morning from him, and Tanya has printed that off, and that was what was given to you at the beginning of this meeting. I asked Doug if he would go back, send us an analysis once again of all of the information that he had received from us, and then I asked for his recommendations on where he thought we needed to fit in order to be competitive in the market based on his experience and what he knows is being asked out there as he goes out and tries to help us identify the best candidate for this position. I think he was very open in his email about where we stand. And so I just want to go over a few items with you. Currently, he is going off the assessment that our starting salary or our average salary is $180,000. With the adjusted PERS rate, it's $169,200. And so he makes a number of comments in there that if we were to use that, that would still put us on the very low end of a district for our size. So he made some recommendations both in total compensation and then PERS adjusted compensation. And so his recommendation for us, if we use just the PERS model, so this is not total compensation, this is what a superintendent would receive once his PERS has been removed or her PERS has been removed, would be 183 to 197. He tells us that that would put us in a very competitive range amongst the various districts that we would be competing with based on our size and our location. So he has asked for us to provide him a range, and so I just wanted to open up to the board so that we can have some discussion on that tonight, and then hopefully be able to bring some consensus. Again, this is not the final salary, this is not the contract, this is just what we are putting on our recruitment paperwork to help individuals who are looking at us know where we would fall as far as a salary goes. So I will turn the time over to the board. Debbie.
So I just want to be clear, is this range for salary or total compensation with vacation?
So he gave both. So if you look at it, he said a range which would be total salary compensation. He said it should be between $195,000 and $210,000. He said that would put the district in a very competitive range with the market. A PERS adjusted range would be $183,000 to $197,000. So those two numbers at the end of the email kind of put it into context, total compensation versus PERS. And so that's the range, and we would clarify that in the statement. It's just us identifying a range that we would be comfortable offering.
So, I'm sorry for not understanding this clearly. So you think that 183 to 197 is the salary, the range for total would be 195 to 210?
That is what he recommended to us, so.
And I realize that he's working under a mistaken assumption that we have discussed and agreed to 180 in the first place, which we did not do. But that's kind of a moot point at this point. Thank you.
So,
Gary?
I guess I should say his recommendation looks reasonable to me. It would be fair to say that I am one of the members of the board that is on the high side of the compensation number, and that's because of my experience in the industry and company that I work for, what I'm seeing out there related to what we have to pay for salaries to retain people and to recruit people has gone up significantly in the last few years. And because of that, if we want to attract quality candidates, we have to be in the market range. And so I would be supportive of what Dr. Doug Nelson has recommended.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? We'll go Cassie and then Todd, since she got the green light first. Not that I can see Todd's green light, but.
I would agree that range seems reasonable.
Okay.
And comparable.
Thank you. Todd?
And which range is that? The former?
Well, depending on how
Are we talking about the range of a total salary of 195 to 210, or?
So I think the best way to look at it,
I'm looking at multiple documents here. Right. What was done on the contract analysis and then his obvious
This is his recommendation.
comparison and
yeah,
recommendation.
so
correct?
the email that you have is him just writing out, his thoughts on, as he looks at the market, as he knows what he has to compete against in order to bring us quality candidates. That was his recommendation there. You do have in your packet, a breakdown of highs and lows and averages and comparable districts, et cetera, and we've had a chance to look at all of those things. I think his analysis is more real time, where he's saying, this is what we're seeing as we're recruiting for lots of different superintendents across the country, and specifically in Oregon. We know what other districts are offering. If you wish to be competitive, you need to fall in this range. So
after PERS is paid, the range is 183 to 197, if I'm reading that correctly?
yes. And I think another way to look at it is a percentile rank. So as you look at where does an individual fall in their salary based on a comparison between every other superintendent of a like-sized district in the United States. And, he put there that if we were to offer 197, that would put us in the 90 to 95th percentile. So that's one of the top paying districts. I don't know that we feel comfortable with that, but certainly that should help us kind of visualize where everybody else is in the market and then where we want to fall as far as recruiting the best individual. We just talked about the budget. I'll just share some of my feelings. This is the individual that you hire to be the superintendent is the person who is going to set the tone for the district. You're looking at a difference of literally $10,000 or $15,000 for the best versus an average person. And from my money and from my thinking, our children, our district, why would we not want the very best? And I'm always someone who wants to go for the best, and I would hope that we would want the best for our students, we would want the best for the district. And while I don't believe that we need to overpay, I certainly think we want to come in at a very competitive place in the market, and we want to try to attract the very best candidates that we can. I would hate to think that we would be missing out on someone because we didn't offer $5,000 or $10,000 more, which, really, in the grand scheme of things, based on the types of individuals that we can have come and apply for this job, is minuscule. I mean, it makes a huge difference, as we all know, who's running the ship and the thoughts and processes, experiences that they have. Someone who has a lot of experience, who has a lot of know-how, has their pick of districts at this time. And so you're really, we're in a buyer's market, so to speak. This is the wrong time to have to go out and hire someone without being very competitive about how we do things. A lot of districts are looking for superintendents currently. It's been a rough couple of years for superintendents, and I'm sure Kirk can attest to that. And so we are here looking for someone to fill that spot, and I do think, and I would encourage the board to think about the competitive nature with which we find ourselves, and that we want to go out and find the very best person that we can. So,
Yeah, so that's all agreeable to me. The idea that we have a range means that someone, in theory, who is coming on as a first-time, second-time superintendent has 5 years under their belt versus someone who's retiring in the next 5 years would dictate where we
absolutely
compensate them within that 183 to 197.
Right.
And I would be agreeable
again,
to that.
and you're right, it is a range. This is not what we're paying someone, this is just a range that we would feel comfortable in offering someone with appropriate qualifications.
And negotiations would happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that range.
All right, so this isn't something that we put on to vote, but I do need at least a consensus from the board on the range. So the recommendation from Doug Nelson is 183 to 197. So may I have a motion for that? We'll just do this officially.
Brian likes thumbs up.
I move that we accept Dr. Doug Nelson's recommendation on salary.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? Okay, Tanya, can we have a roll call vote then to make it official?
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes?
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Member Richardson,
Yes.
Member De La Grange.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is to set a date for the DEMSB session, number 4. In your packet, Tanya has included a number of dates in January and February. And you'll need to remember that we do have a number of meetings set up for our superintendent search, as well as now a budget committee meeting and our board meetings. So we do need to finish this out, though we are halfway through. We have 3 more meetings to get $5,000 in scholarship money for our children, so we're going to keep plowing through this. But there are a list of dates that are there. January 31st and February 10th those were recommended by Kristen as dates that would work best for her, and so I'll ask the board if they have a preference on one of those. Or Tanya, was it both of those? So we need to pick both of those dates? Or were we picking 2 dates or just 1 date?
That would be number 4 and number 5.
Okay, so 2 dates. Brian?
The February 10th date is tough for me. So if we can avoid that, that would be helpful.
And Board Chair Nelson, you're the only one that has the dates in front of you.
Oh,
Yeah, a little
well,
confusion
perfect.
here.
Well, I want everybody to pick the dates that I'm thinking of then, and we'll move forward. So the dates that are listed, I'm sorry, January 26th, January 31st, February 1st and 2nd, and February 9th and 10th. I believe the February dates are, what are those, Wednesdays and Thursdays? Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and the 26th and the 31st is a Wednesday or a Monday. So,
February 2nd is also not good for me. Sorry.
I'd prefer to stay away from all Mondays if we can, but I'll sacrifice one.
I'm sorry, what are my choices again?
sure. The 26th of January, the 31st of January, February 1st, February 2nd, February 9th, and February 10th.
And to clarify, we need to pick how many of those?
2.
Copy?
I'm unable to do weekdays that end in Y.
That'll make the meeting shorter then, Gary. We'll just do it without you, yes. We'll have you zoom in.
Actually, without my Outlook that's at work, I have no idea tonight what dates I could do.
So maybe we'll do this. Can you send out just a Google Docs and we'll just pick a date and we'll try to accommodate everybody and we won't take up any more time with the meeting. We'll make sure that we get that sorted out here in the next few days. And then we'll let everybody pick and then we'll go from there. So, all right, 5.4. I'm going to turn the time over to Cassie to talk about our local control advocacy letter and discuss a little bit about where that came from and what's being asked of the district. So, Cassie.
Thanks for the heads up. Eagle Point has started kind of a, what would you call it, a action in our Southern Oregon area. They've come up with their ideas if we each school districts, I think there's 7 out of 9 that have passed it currently, that we are asking for local control, explaining, I mean, it's pretty explanatory in our packet. And then the idea is to then come together and kind of do it as one after each approves it.
So I don't know if any of you have had the chance to read the letter. It is to the Governor Brown and essentially is asking that school districts be and counties be given local control over decision makings with regards to COVID measures. And many of the other districts have submitted something like that. I know that they have taken this to Jim Green, who is the OSBA chair, and he is taking that before the governor as well. But each district has been asked to consider adopting something similar to what has been done at other districts. And Cassie has been able to attend more of the meetings than I, so that's why I'm letting her speak on it. But, So, Brian, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I just have a question. It says asking for return of local decision-making of the management of COVID-19. I understand that. It says Grants Pass School District does not have plans for immediate changes to the requirements, but rather to begin a discussion with local public health in our community regarding what makes the most sense for our students and staff. So the presumption with this letter is that at some point there will be some changes suggested, and so I'm just, otherwise this letter wouldn't exist. So I'm just wondering what kind of the context behind maybe what some of those changes might be. If I'm going to support the letter.
So I think the letter is simply asking the governor to give back local control to the counties. I don't know that they're supposing that there was any changes. I mean, it is simply just asking for local control.
Under the presumption that,
that she'll do it, or that?
Well, that something is not satisfactory currently, which, depending on who you are, that varies.
You're right.
So.
I think I could give a good example. Early on during the pandemic, there was some 450 student per campus cohort that was allowed to return based on certain needs of those students. And because it was a state decision made at a central location, that was just the rule. Well, we actually on our Grants Pass campus had 7 buildings, each of which were larger than some small districts had for their entire campus. So there was really no logical reason, safety-wise, that we couldn't have made each of our 7 buildings a cohort, and the smaller school district would have made their 1 building a cohort. But because it was a central state decision, we weren't allowed to do that. So that's a local control because we know that kind of stuff.
Any other comment? We do have one community member who'd like to speak on this item. Debbie, do you have a comment first?
Well, it's kind of a picky little point, but, one of these last sentences says, rather to begin a discussion with local public health. It's my understanding that we have weekly, if not daily, discussions with our local public health authorities, and so
We do.
it's kind of a misnomer there.
It's a weekly meeting, Sherry, is it not? Are you still meeting on a weekly basis? I attended many of those meetings for several months during our recent surge.
We actually have communication with the public health department probably daily, but we have an official meeting I think it's Wednesday now, Monday or Wednesday, that we meet with the public health department. So yes, that's been ongoing throughout the pandemic.
Why don't we have Kay Austin, you'd like to speak to this? We'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for this letter. I believe local control of decisions is vital. Yesterday, when I first picked up my grandchild from a District 7 elementary school, I was told that a very sad thing happened while classes were on a field trip to the Bear Hotel. A little classmate started feeling lightheaded and nauseous and suddenly vomited into his mask. Imagine that happening to you. Vomiting into a mask pressed against your face adds an extra layer of horrendous emotional trauma, not only for this child suffering the effects of the hypercapnia that he experienced, but for his friends watching him suffer. The incident put a sad damper on an otherwise anticipated excursion for all involved. It's a myth that masks prevent viruses from spreading. The overall evidence is now clear. Standard cloth and surgical masks offer next to no protection against virus-sized particles or small aerosols. There has been one large randomized controlled trial of mask effectiveness with COVID, and there have been hundreds of mask studies related to influenza transmission done over several decades. It is well established that masks do not stop viruses. Part of that evidence shows that cloth masks actually increase influenza-linked illness. The fact is, after reviewing all of the studies worldwide, the CDC itself has noted no reduction in viral transmission using a face mask. However, studies of simple surgical masks found significant reductions in blood oxygen levels in people wearing them. Furthermore, the mandatory mask mandate in schools is a major threat to a child's development. It ignores the essential needs of a growing child. The well-being of children and young people is highly dependent on the emotional connection with others. Masks create a threatening and unsafe environment where emotional connection becomes difficult. The U.S. and Oregon State Constitution guarantees personal freedoms from mandated experimental medical procedures and PPE that compromises bodily autonomy. The law is very clear. It is unlawful to conduct medical research unless steps are taken to secure informed consent of all participants and allow them to opt out. Requiring children to wear a mask sets the stage for contracting any infection, including COVID-19, and making the consequences of that infection much graver. We in the community commend you for taking this first step of informing Governor Brown via your letter dated 12/14, stating that our school district must be able to make decisions that are right for our community and our children. But I'd like to urge you as a board to go further than that. Please remember that your personal oaths to support the Constitution of the United States and the individual rights supersedes any unlawful policy sent down from Salem. Kate Brown is a civil servant who has made grave errors in judgment and policy making in the past. If she continues to push mandates that are unhealthy for our county's children, we must push back and reject them. Do not wait for Brown's permission to proceed with what you know to be right for our Grants Pass school staff and children. Please end the mask mandates for children and staff now. And I have a copy of all of the research and everything that's been done, including FDA and CDC comments with all references.
Thank you, Kay. All right, so are there any other comments from the board with regards to the letter? Yes, Brian.
So Gary's example was very illustrative for me. I think that's a good example of a creative solution that we could have employed at that point, and it's a shame that we weren't able to. I do take a little bit of issue, like, we're not the first elected body to think of sending a letter to Governor Brown. She's probably received hundreds, if not thousands. And so I don't have any illusion that this is actually going to do anything. It's more of a posturing or a grandstanding kind of a thing. So I guess that's that.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any other comments from the board? Gary?
Is there, well, I guess the question for Cassie, is there any problem with us changing the language so that we could put in Debbie's comment about just continuing discussions with our local health?
No, in fact, they encourage altering or wordsmithing to fit our communities.
I do like the idea that it's a concerted effort with other school districts and that we would voice our support in this manner to combine efforts.
Sure.
And that does have weight and, in my mind, not a posturing as much as a plea for strength in numbers.
Well, I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I don't have any problems supporting the letter and sending it off and discussing local control. However, I do know our county health directors very well, as I sat in many meetings and I've worked with them on many issues. I would encourage everyone not to assume that and take the thought process and the illusion that by doing this, and let's say the governor does listen and she does give local control, that means that the mask mandates are going away. Our county health officials are not going to just simply say, oh, well, we can do what we want. We will continue to follow the rules because they will continue to enforce those types of rules. Just knowing them and having worked with them, I do think Gary's example is right. We were able to look at our district and see what we can do here within the rules, but just they're not going away. And so I guess I just want to reiterate that to everybody, that we don't have this illusion that, let's say we do get local control, that all of a sudden means that kids don't have to wear masks at school. There will still be rules in place. The county health directors will still be able to make those recommendations and mandates, and we as a school board will then face the heat of that much more so than we already do, because there will still be an ask of a superintendent and a district to follow the local leaders, and our local leaders are not going to just run away with saying you don't have to do any of these things anymore. So careful what we're asking for. If we were to get that, it doesn't mean that this is going to get any easier. We will just take more heat and still be asked to follow very similar rules that are in place today, and we may have some say as far as the classroom sizes and various things based on our facilities, but it is not going to change the world if we were to be given local control. So I hope that people understand that as we move forward. We'll just move the heat onto us if the governor were to grant that. And we will still be asked to follow the mandates from the county health directors, which will still be the same as they currently are. So, Todd?
I agree. If this changes one small thing, the rudder on the ship can change. And therefore, yes, I don't have any illusions that it would do much more than make a statement. But if we were able to get to that point where we did have control and it changed one small, it would be worth the effort of a letter and support with others.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of us being able to manage ourselves with our county health directors. So I'm all in favor of that. So we will need a motion then to approve this and a second. So I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the letter to the governor with Debbie's addition.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tanya, will give us a roll call vote, please?
Board Chair Nelson,
Yes?
Member Coleman,
Yes.
Member Wilkins,
Yes.
Member Neville,
Yes.
Member Brownell,
Yes.
Member Richardson, Member De La Grange.
Sure.
All right, that was the most enthusiastic rounds of yes I've heard in a while, so, okay. All right, moving on to 6.0, our action items. 6.1, second and final reading of amended policies and ARs. Yes?
Special concerns?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm just so excited to move the meeting along, so. Do our board members have any other special concerns that they would like to discuss?
Did you have them?
Yeah.
You can go first.
Thank you, Gary. So there was a few things that have been brought to my attention that I just wanted the board to be aware of. And maybe most of the board is aware and I'm just unaware, but I heard from a parent that regarding our volunteers that we have work at schools, that there is, they described it as a fairly onerous process and that they had to pay like an $80 fee to be able to volunteer, and that they had to like go somewhere and, you know, they had to fill out paperwork and then go get fingerprinted, and then kind of like it just, the way they described it was quite onerous, you know, unless you have an abundance of time and resources to do so. So is that accurate, or?
I don't know the exact, off the top of my head, we revisit this regularly, but it depends on the level of volunteer. If a volunteer will be alone and responsible for a group of kids, or whether a volunteer will have a group of kids under the supervision of a certified or other employee. And so there's different requirements for the different levels of volunteers. And so we can give the board an update on our volunteer process and levels of volunteers at a future meeting.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. I think the concern is more around the financial obligation. But yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay.
I also heard at the recent parent-teacher conferences that happened, I believe at the middle school level, from the parent that I know, and again, this is secondhand. This is not what I've experienced. This is just what I've heard. But I heard that there may not have been enough slots for all of the parents to have conferences, and so if certain parents weren't on top of it, then all the spots filled up and they weren't able to have the conference with the teacher. So I just wanted to bring that concern forward that I heard around the conferences, and just see if that is the case, to figure out how we can remedy that so everyone has an opportunity to have that conference.
Thank you. That's noted. I know that in times of COVID, conferences were very creative in trying to maximize the capacity we did have. I believe we were pleasantly surprised at the turnout for conferences this year. And in terms of a typical year where we've got the night set aside and they're in person, we have better turnout right now than we've had in prior years. So we're pleasantly surprised at the demand, and we'll try to adjust going forward.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on the right track there. The parents that were really on it, that, maybe had students that are doing really well, may not have needed a conference as much as some of the other students. So yeah, thank you for that explanation. Do you want to go, Gary? I've got a couple more, but we can change it up.
This is a tough one, and unfortunately, I'm afraid that a number of people are going to try to take these comments and apply them in a place that they don't belong, but I'll give it a shot anyway. This is one board member's comments about the walkout at Grants Pass High School. These comments are not meant to be a judgment of the reasons and speech of the walkout. Anyone implying otherwise would be disingenuous. These comments would be the same no matter what the purpose of the walkout. I'm going to discuss the expectations of Grants Pass School District 7 as a member of our wider community. Two issues. First, parents entrust the district to be the parents while the children are in the district's care. Second, relates to the city with its police department and the larger community. The Board of Grants Pass School District 7 has the following policy. I will read the part about demonstrations. Quote, JFI, student demonstrations and petitions, demonstrations. Students may verbally express their personal opinions, but these opinions shall not be allowed to interfere with the rights of others to express themselves. The use of obscenity, personal attacks, or threats of harm to persons, property, or reputation is prohibited. All student meetings on school property shall function only as part of the normal educational process or as authorized by the principal or his or her duly appointed representative and with a faculty member in attendance. Students have the freedom to assemble peacefully. However, conducting or participating in any assemblage which interferes with the operation of the school or classroom is prohibited. Invitations to outside speakers shall be approved by the principal or his or her appointed representative. No speaker who openly and knowingly advocates breaking the law shall be invited to speak. One of the outcomes of the unauthorized walkout was that 6 students received citations and 10 additional students received warnings for their conduct. This is a foreseeable outcome of an illegal event. I can remember 3 times in the past where school activities, which started out as what some people might think as acceptable, turned into much bigger issues. The reason for that is when the activity starts out as illegal, where is the line as to what is acceptable illegal and unacceptable illegal? When the children in our care do not hear a strong message about what conduct is acceptable, they become confused. The district failed by not giving the children a strong message that a walkout during class time is not okay. Even though there was no intent by the district to condone additional actions other than the walkout, once the children were outside of class and on public property, additional people with motives not aligned with those of the children began to participate. Suddenly, a small action became a police action outside of district control. People from other cities showed up urging the children to do illegal acts. People with messages that had nothing to do with the walkout showed up looking for publicity. That brings me to the second part. Now the city police are involved. They need to keep the public street clear, prevent assaults from taking place, and in general keep everyone safe. The police, and by extension the city and wider community, are deeply disappointed that the district allowed this to happen. When more than a walkout occurred, the district staff in attendance did not step in to tell the children to stop and try to bring order to the situation. This failure has damaged the district's relationship with the police department and the larger community. My opinion is the district should use Dr. Bloomquist's restorative justice templates to move the children who participated, maybe all students, to a better understanding of how to properly conduct themselves in our Grants Pass community. Again, these comments about the walkout are not related to the purpose of the walkout. Ultimately, I'm concerned about the safety of the children in our care.
Thank you, Gary. Ryan, you had a few other items?
Yeah, just two. I recently learned of a product that basically you can, it's essentially what it is it's like a bullet-resistant window film. I thought that could be something that could be very applicable to our classrooms that are more vulnerable to, public spaces. The middle schools I know have windows that are a little more susceptible. The high school has, a closed campus, so it's not maybe as big of an issue here, but even here we have windows that face the street. So I was just wondering if staff has ever looked into a product like that to have on the windows to increase the protection in the classrooms, and if they haven't, if we might be able to get a little bit more information about it to see if it's something we might want to pursue.
I'm going to defer to Sherry because I do recall our conversations around the variety of things that we can do to equip our doors, equip our windows, and I believe the bulletproof or bullet-resistant film was one of those topics, Sherry.
Yes, that is correct. We did look into that several years ago and had quite a few discussions with public safety about, their opinions about that product and the work that they had done in looking at it. And it was not something that the police department was in favor of at that time. We can talk to them again about it. We've looked at a variety of different options that we could use in our schools that would help prevent some nefarious act from occurring. And I think from the police perspective, when you look at the school shootings that have occurred in the United States over the last 100 years, there haven't ever been any where they've shot through the windows. The thing that has protected the schools more than anything is their ability to keep their door closed and to not allow the shooter into the building. And so we focus the majority of our energies on that, on how we keep the doorway safe, because a shooter has never, people have said, oh, they're going to shoot the lock off the door. They've never done that. When a shooter comes into a school, they're looking for an easy target. And so if they can't get in the door, they move on. And so, yes, we've done a lot of research on a lot of different ways to keep our schools safe. And I have ultimate confidence in what our police have advised us to do and the direction that we have gone as far as planning and preparing and teaching our kids how to keep themselves safe and teaching our staff how to help keep the kids safe when they're in the classroom.
Okay. I don't know. I personally feel like it might be worth revisiting just as far as, I don't know how much it would cost, and I'm not under any illusions that it's going to, prevent every type of disaster. But if it's just another arrow in our quiver, so to speak, as far as a defensive measure, this probably happened before I was on the board, so I haven't seen that information, so I don't know if that's something that you could
look at it again.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So Sherry or Kurt, maybe a follow-up question to that. Have we ever had our security come and update the board on policies and procedures surrounding what would happen in the event of, and how are we prepared? Maybe that would be a better place for us to start, is just for the board to be a little better educated on in the event of a disaster of that nature, what have we talked about? Where are we in our planning stages? So, Ryan, maybe if that would be a little better place, just to get a broad overview of what has been discussed, and because this unfortunately is a recurring theme throughout the country at various times, and so for us to know where we stand as a school district and what we are doing to be prepared in the event of such a disaster. Why don't we, Ryan, I will work with Kirk and we'll try to get some update for the board in that regard.
Great, thank you. I have just one more quick thing, and it's a little
We're
bit
limited
lighter.
to 10, Brian, so I'm just kidding, go ahead.
It's been a while since we had a meeting, so they've been racking up. I remember when I was in high school, there was a thing near the end of the year called Senior Superstars, and I think most people in this room are probably familiar with that. Is that something that still happens? Has that been discontinued, or do we?
We had we tried to make balancing superstar and recognition of a lot of the personalities that we tried several times in city town secretary itself.
Awesome, thank you.
Apparently I went to a very uncool high school. I don't even know what that is, but okay. All right, any other, Debbie?
Well, my Rotary Club has a little book club, and the book we're going to discuss Wednesday is called High Conflict, Why We Get Trapped and How to Get Out by Amanda Ripley, and I found it very interesting and educational and recommend it. I'd also mention my Rotary Club put together 216 backpacks last night, and I really appreciate the high school and Clay Rogneville and Kirk Alcove for allowing the commons to be used as the staging area for filling those backpacks. It went very quickly and smoothly, and these backpacks go out to kindergartners in just about every school in the county, including all of our elementary schools, for highest at-risk children to have a little extra over the holiday. And then I did go to the holiday concert, and it literally brings tears to my eyes to see all these kids performing and singing and playing their little hearts out. And the music really does touch my inner self, so I really appreciated it.
Yes?
One quick thing. I think is comfort food still happening? What? Comfort foods? Do we? No.
We have about 3 organizations in Kansas that are moving it. There are still some staff that are still monthly for that.
Oh, right.
So
That's
right
good.
now, that food is being, as we heard seen earlier about a lot of food.
Uh-huh.
And we are still, with different groups on campus attempting to get that food in the hands of the kids. So
Yeah.
It's being done, but not organized.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
No, Brian, come on now. One more. Okay, one more, Brian. Go
I'm
ahead.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. There was an opportunity. City Councilor Valerie Lovelace informed me of an opportunity for the school district to save some money. Apparently, there's a mechanism to where the fees that the school district pays for stormwater, from what she says, the city is willing to waive those stormwater fees if the school district, I guess, does some sort of education as part of their curriculum around water. And I don't have all the details right in front of me. I'd be happy to share the email that she sent me with the board. But basically, it sounded like we could save over $100,000 a year in stormwater fees with things that we probably are mostly already doing. It's just a matter of us documenting that we're doing them and sending it to the city. So it sounds like an easy $100,000 a year if we can do that.
We need 5 million, so we need another couple hundred of those ideas, but that sounds great.
I'm trying.
Kirk, I'm aware of that issue. Valerie has been talking to me about that for quite a while, and the tyranny of the urgent, that has not made it as a priority item for me. It's not just a matter of just sending in a piece of paper. There's some work that has to go into that. So I will fall on the sword for that one so that Brian doesn't have to tell you how terrible I am. So.
I love you, Sherry.
Todd, you had a comment? Todd?
I'm getting hungry talking about food, but I was just going to be a little snarky. 'Tis the season to donate food, and I've been out on collections with my scouts. I think with our warehouse out on Riverbanks Road, or not Riverbanks.
Josephine County Food Bank?
Yeah, Family Food Bank. A lot of community efforts have come together. I'm not the only one that says I gain weight during the holidays. So it is a season of us gorging when others don't have a chance to eat quality, good food. Just an observation as I'm getting hungry during this hour and wondering what I'm going to eat next. So I'm willing to go without.
I think there are some snacks somewhere we can scrounge up for you. All right, so look, there's Brian. He's going to share. It's the Christmas time. So let's move on. If there are no other reports, we're going to go on to action items 6.0. So we have 6.1, second and final reading of amended policies and ARs. So 6.1.1, policy IA, instructional goals. 6.1.2, policy IL, assessment program. 6.1.3, policy IJ, school counseling program. 6.1.4, policy IGBHA, alternative education programs. 6.1.5, policy IGBHA R1, evaluation of alternative programs, and IGBH R2. And then policy 6.17, IKF, graduation requirements. And 6.18, policy IKFB, graduation exercises. So any comments on those policies? You have one individual, Katie Meadart, who would like to speak to 6.1.3. So Katie, we'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, board members. Thank you. So I'm here as a private citizen, and everything I share is my opinion and not representative of any entity. I would like to ask that you modify the proposed revision for policy IJ prior to adopting the final draft tonight. Please add the following language to policy IJ. The district will work closely with parents/guardians by notifying them when their student participates in services and activities associated with the school counseling program, end quote. As a mother of 2 children in District 7, I agree with the ODE's description of a school counselor's role as cited on the comprehensive school counseling review and referenced on this policy, that it is essential for the school counselor to work closely with parents. We need a better policy stating parents will be informed to ensure this partnership will occur. An example of a situation where this verbiage would have benefited a student, the counselor, and a family occurred November 16th of this year, when my oldest son was pulled into the counseling office while students protested my reinstatement. He had to listen to kids yell and scream for 2 periods. The school didn't mark that he was in the counseling center. It appeared in Power School that he was in his classes having a normal day. My son will remember the day for the rest of his life. I asked the school if there was a procedure for marking my son as present in the counseling center. And days later, they went back and marked my son to reflect he was in the counseling center. The schools already have this capability in Power School to mark a student in the counseling center. Schools need you as a board to create the accountability to use the capability. Again, one way to do this is by adding, and I'm going to say it again, one sentence. The district will work closely with parents and guardians by notifying them when their student participates in services and activities associated with the school counseling program. As a parent has the right to know if their child is going to a school counselor. The details of conversations in a counseling center may be privileged under Oregon law, but a parent knowing if their child is in the counseling center is not. Please partner with parents in helping to raise and educate their children. I have proposed an easy action to step into this partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so board, any thoughts or comments on these proposed policies and ARs?
So in policy IA, I submitted a essentially reordered, keeping much of the original language of the instructional goals, but I think following all of the necessary requirements from the new legislation, Superintendent Cole said that my revised version would meet those, or doesn't have any issues with the Oregon legislative requirements. I kind of like the version that I had. It puts the sort of preamble part, makes that a little bit larger, but it keeps as bullet number 1, a solid foundation in skills of reading, writing, problem solving, listening, speaking, critical thinking. And I just like that to be the first bullet of our policy for instructional goals. So that's why I proposed a different wording for policy IA.
So I just have a question about that because the copy of policy IA in our packet has 19 bullets and the copy that you submitted has 7 bullets. Am I understanding that? So it's significantly different than the proposed policy. And I hate to say, but I haven't had time to compare and contrast them. I guess I didn't realize that it was going to be so drastically different than the proposed, so it would be hard for me to vote in favor tonight, just not having time to analyze it. Sorry.
We don't have to pass it tonight.
Debbie?
I did take a little bit of time to closely evaluate both things and could see where you wordsmithed some things, cut out 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. I was concerned that you also cut out the word collaborative, which I feel is an important quality to keep in the policy, and added the word tolerating, which I feel is a red button word for some people because it has kind of some assumptions and implicit bias as to superiority and inferiority in positions that, you know, a majority might tolerate a minority, which I'm sure is not what you meant for that word to express. Well, it's in there. Under number 4. And number 4 had some different wording for the different subjects taught in school, and I prefer the version that the administration worked on to come up with versus the one presented in yours. And then I guess another wordsmithing change was the district knows versus the district assumes. Minor little things there, but overall, I felt that this drastic reorganization of this policy was kind of in the realm of over micromanaging a district leadership team effort.
Is this from the district leadership team or from the state, from OSBA?
So the bulk of the language is recommended by OSBA. OSBA provides all of the policy.
And is it optional, required, or recommended?
Recommended policy. It's not a required policy. On the agenda, right next to, we didn't read them, but each one has an optional, highly recommended, or required. Correct.
Not very.
Correct. I think.
When the state came out with it on the board policy, the OSBA came out with the recommended revision, looking back to the 2004 policy, which in essence is the language you just went back to the 2004 language, all those bullets are the original version. We felt as a leadership team that we did send to all the district directors, and we talked about how our goals have changed since 2004. And we did eliminate part of OSBA's language that we felt like we didn't need in a couple of their bullets, but felt like the language we had gotten, which had been quite a bit updated since 2004 version, more accurately represented our position as of 2021, about 2022. School year. So that's why we came forward with the recommendation to update our 2004 policy.
All right, so I think what I'm going to do is we're going to take these one at a time. So we need a motion for policy IA. Had some discussion on it. I've heard a number of different comments. What would we like to do as a board?
If the board's amenable, I would prefer to push it off to the next meeting for purely selfish reasons to review it myself, but I understand if the board wants to vote tonight, and I can abstain.
All right, well, that's not a motion, but that is a recommendation. Anyone else from the board like to comment on this?
I move that we table policy IA until the next suitable board meeting.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye or yes.
Aye.
Aye. Gary, I want to make sure we get it right. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, very good. So we'll go on to 6.1.2, policy IL, assessment program. Any comments? We'll entertain a motion to approve policy 6.1.2, policy IL.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of this policy, please say yes.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
opposed? Thank you. That carries. Policy IJ, school counseling program.
So I would move that we table policy policy IJ until the next suitable board meeting for the administration to bring forth their recommendation as to how we could include some language about parental notification.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. What was that last part, Gary?
That the administration would consider some language about parental notification.
Parental notification?
Yeah, when they bring it back.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments, Brian?
So I think as part of that, with the administration coming back, maybe some, I don't know what the right word is, analysis or, I don't know what unintended consequences could come of something like that. So if that could, be brought forward, just so we're fully informed, that'd be good.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of tabling policy IJ to our next meeting, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Okay, I don't believe I heard any comments or concerns for the others, so can we adopt policy 6.14 through policy 6.18 in a single motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is it seconded?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Tanya, did you get all that? We'll chalk it up to Gary.
I heard Brian, but he's closer.
All right, very good. Thank you. So that wraps up those action items. 6.2, we have done out of order, but we have taken care of that, and so I will send that information on to Doug. So we will move on to 6.3, approval of the AP Calculus textbook. Do we have someone who'd like to speak to the calculus textbook? Yes.
I'm not sure I can speak to it. I do appreciate Debbie coming in and taking a peek at it. Like she said, it's like a lot of calculus.
Wow, way to go, Debbie.
Have a new teacher teaching our AP Calculus class this year, and she is in need of some resources, and so I'm trying to get this set up for her so that she has something going into second semester. She's provided in her packet for rationale for this. I think Devin summarized it for me in our conversation prior to board meeting. It's accessible. Acceptable as the possibility, calculus PD of my caveat, but it's going to be a good tool to help students prepare for the AP exam.
Well, it's all Greek to me. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the AP Calculus text?
You're looking for a motion? I would make one.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I might mention, I did take a quick peek at it. I thought the illustrations looked fairly clear. The table index contents was, I thought, very clear as far as saying, this is what you want to know, here's where you want to go. So I think it will be a good resource for our students.
Okay, well, it's over my head, but not my children's.
That's good parenting.
All right, all in favor of accepting the motion to approve the AP Calculus textbook, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, our future meeting dates, January 11th will be our next board meeting, and then the 25th. Sherry's going to send us a date for a budget committee meeting, and then we will have a polling out to each of the board members for our DEMSB meetings coming up. Also, on the 11th, we will have an update from Doug Nelson with regards to his community meetings that he's having with the various groups, subcommittees, not subcommittees, listening groups, stakeholder groups, thank you, that will be happening on the 11th and the 12th. So with that, then, we will adjourn our regular session. Thank you very much for your participation, and for those in attendance tonight, we'll open the executive session in 5 minutes.